Hello, friends and colleagues, and welcome to the Tourism Skill Shop, hosted by State of Washington Tourism, SWT. My name is Matthew Ozuna, and I am the Destination Development Manager at SWT. I will introduce today's webinar on workforce development tools from the Washington Hospitality Association. Please utilize the chat function in Zoom to say hello and let us know where you are joining from today. Feel free to share your comments in the chat and use the Q&A feature as well. My colleague, Marissa Petrovich, will be helping with the webinar today. She is the Industry Relations Coordinator at SWT. Marissa and I will do our best to organize and prioritize questions from the audience and bring them to the attention of our guest speakers near the end of the webinar. In case you don't know, the Tourism Skill Shop is one of many industry educational programs from State of Washington Tourism. This webinar series will engage colleagues across the tourism sector, broadening their industry knowledge, skills, and network. Each webinar will highlight a specific issue or skill for tourism professionals to ponder and discuss with industry experts. SWT usually hosts live webinars of the Tourism Skill Shop on the third or fourth Thursday of every month from 10 to 11 a.m. Skill Shop webinars are free and open to all tourism stakeholders. These webinars will also be recorded and shared with registrants, as well as other users on the SWT YouTube channel. For Tourism Skill Shop and other industry updates, follow SWT on LinkedIn and visit the SWT industry website, where tourism stakeholders can sign up to become industry advocates. We'll need your help during the next legislative session and learn more about advertising opportunities with the state of Washington Tourism. Now, let's talk about today's webinar. For today's webinar, join SWT and the Washington Hospitality Association for a closer look at the Education Foundation's workforce development tools. Attendees will learn how to utilize several resources, including resume building, interview preparation, workshops, and hiring events, as well as professional trainings and industry certificates. Tourism stakeholders can access this information for free and help new and current workers succeed in the hospitality industry. So looking forward to this webinar today with a host of great speakers, David, Loren, and Sonja, and Jeff. I don't want to forget Jeff as well. Jeff, you've been on a skill shop before, so you kind of know how this goes. So folks, before we dive in, I just want to give more information on our guest speakers. I have quick bios just so you know where these folks are coming from, their background, and their knowledge. So I'll start with Sonja. From a dishwasher to director, Sonja Halverson has experienced firsthand the power of hospitality to build careers and communities. Now serving as the director of the Washington Hospitality Association Education Foundation, she leads statewide efforts to connect talent to opportunity by shaping perceptions of hospitality, strengthening training programs, and illuminating career paths across Washington. Sonja champions workforce development initiatives that inspire, equip, elevate the next generation of hospitality professionals, ensuring the industry remains a vibrant, welcoming place to build a meaningful career. Sonja, thanks again for joining SWT. We saw you at the State Tourism Conference, and I thought there was a lot more to unpack, so we brought you back for a webinar. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
David Faro is the Senior Manager of Workforce and Business Development at the National Restaurant Association. He leads national efforts to expand the hospitality sector registered apprenticeships, strengthens partnerships with workforce boards, and scales training programs that upskill hospitality employees through industry-recognized credentials such as Serve Success and Guest Service Gold. David works closely with state restaurant associations, employers, educators, and community partners to design and implement workforce development models that create clear career pathways in restaurants and hotels. With decades of experience in hospitality and workforce innovation, he bridges national strategy with local action. I like that, David, to help businesses grow and workers thrive. David, thanks for joining us today. I had a great conversation with you yesterday, and I'm looking forward to more collaboration with you in the future. And though you're not in Olympia, Washington now, you live not too far away, but you're actually coming from, you're broadcasting in from New Orleans today. Is that correct? So,
Correct.
so thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. A 30-year veteran of the tourism industry, David Bowe currently serves as the Senior Director of Sector Strategies at Pack Mountain, engaging employers and job seekers across a five-county region to develop a framework for sustainable employment in healthcare, food production, hospitality, which we'll talk about today, manufacturing, wood products, and information technology sectors. Jeff has a proven track record of driving outcomes, having held leadership positions at hotels and destination organizations. Jeff is an accomplished sales and service trainer as well, working with hotel brands such as IHG, Marriott, Best Western to increase sales and service levels, and is a certified facilitator for the Tourism uh, Ambassador Institute. So, Jeff, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Good to be
And
here.
lastly, Loren Taylor was born in South Africa. Loren, that was a surprise to me. And that's where your journey began as a competitive swimmer. At 18, she moved to the US to swim at the collegiate level and eventually became involved with coaching, which ignited a passion for helping others and delivering exceptional customer service. Loren's diverse career spans the automotive industry, hospitality, and law enforcement, where she worked as a 911 operator and a life coach within a state prison, excuse me. With over 25 years of customer service experience, Loren is a dedicated professional known for connecting with people from all walks of life, resolving complex issues, and building strong working relationships. She is deeply committed to exceeding expectations and ensuring customer satisfaction through active listening, clear communication, and a genuine sense of empathy. Loren, I can't wait to talk to you about the work that you're doing in Grays Harbor County. But first, Sonja, we're going to start with you. So I'll go ahead and pull up your PowerPoint
Thank you.
presentation. And the rest of the speakers, you go ahead and mute yourselves and you can turn off your cameras. We'll get to you shortly. And Loren, or excuse me, Sonja, take it away.
Yeah, well, thank you, everyone, for joining me today. I'm excited to spend a few minutes walking you through the work that we're doing over here at the Hospitality Association Education Foundation, and more importantly, how it connects to the challenges and opportunities we're all feeling across our industry. So, as we all know, hospitality is changing, the workforce is changing, and the expectations of the next generation are changing even faster. So today is really about giving you a clear picture of what we're building, why it matters, and where tourism partners like you all fit in. So let me get started with who we are. So we are the small but mighty nonprofit tucked inside the Washington Hospitality Association. Our entire purpose is building the future workforce, illuminating career pathways, expanding high quality training, and pulling together statewide partners who can actually help us move the needle. So we exist to make sure people can see a real future in the industry, that it's not just a job. And then once you understand who we are, that next natural question is, so why does this matter so much right now? So we can go to that next slide. So our workforce challenge isn't just about open positions. It's about the stories people believe about this industry. Too many students only hear the stereotypes, too many workers don't feel invested in, and too many educators just don't see the full picture of what real career progression looks like. So we're tackling both those sides, shifting the narrative and strengthening that actual pathway. One of the biggest ways we're doing that is through our industry, our statewide career hub that Matthew alluded to earlier. So if we go to that next slide, we can show you what that looks like. So we spent 2 years working on this industry. We launched it last June of 2025. So it's built for students, people in the industry, people wanting to enter our industry, and anyone trying to understand what opportunity looks like in hospitality. So it lays out all the resources, like Matt said, resume building, coaching, career pathways, wage data. It'll show you the real live data of what jobs are available in any position across the state. And then it also gives you the skills you need to move up and where to get those trainings across Washington. So it's linked to post-secondary, it's linked to WSU, which they actually took and put it into their curriculum this year in their hospitality business management program. So super excited about that. And then it also shows you the trainings that will talk about here shortly. But showing people the path is really only half of it. We also need to make sure people have access to the training that helps them actually move along that path. So let's go to that next slide where we're talking about our training portfolio. Um, so the trainings we have everything from ServSafe and AHLEI credentials with the National Restaurant Association to leadership development and soft skill essentials. One big one that we're working on now is the guest service gold, but it's only one lane of what we're working on. Our goal is to support people at every stage, every entry level, and those stepping into management for the first time. We're also building that foundation that keeps people growing instead of feeling stuck. So earlier this month, I was lucky enough to spend time at Highline College with their hospitality and tourism program to vet out exactly what a new manager in the industry should expect to know when they graduate and enter the workforce. So that was a pretty cool experience to see how that works. So to make sure this system works, we have to understand what people are actually experiencing. And that's where our main focus right now is our statewide assessment comes in. So we can go to that next slide. So this is the centerpiece of the work for this year. So right now we're surveying employees, students, educators, parents, and workforce partners to understand how people really feel about hospitality as a career, what motivates them, what's confusing them, what beliefs are shaping their choices for our industry. So we're focusing on those emotional drivers because that's what really predicts behavior. When we publish the assessment this spring, it'll become our roadmap for training, messaging, and future investment. And to build that roadmap, we really have to dig beneath the surface into the why behind people's decisions. So next slide. So as we unpack the why, we want to know what makes someone stay, what makes them walk out the door. How do they define stability, success, and happiness? And where is that narrative falling apart? When we understand this clearly, we can build tools, training, and messaging that meet people right where they are, not where they wish they were. And as you all know, the ripple effects reach far beyond restaurants and hotels. They hit the tourism sector directly also. Well, let's move on to that next slide. So why does it matter to tourism? Tourism and hospitality are the same. We share the same workforce, the same guest experience, the same perception challenges. If we shift the narrative statewide, tourism feels that impact immediately. You'll have better trained workers, stronger service culture, and talent that sees a future instead of just a paycheck. So your reach is enormous. When you help get this survey out, we can hear from communities and workers we simply can't reach on our own. So the more voices we include, the more accurate and more actionable the assessment becomes. So your support directly shapes the quality of the roadmap that we're building to shift the narrative in hospitality. Go ahead and go to that next slide because I've made it really easy for everybody to help. This is a QR code, so this is specifically directed towards employees. So if you know of anybody, a school, workforce partner, employer that'd be willing to share this survey, that introduction would go a long way for us. Like I said, we're a small but mighty team, small being the operative word. So a short note from you asking people to take a survey would carry some serious weight for us. So every share expands the voices we hear, and that changes the impact of our final report. So I'm really grateful for your time today. Everything you do to support hospitality means a lot to be in a room with all of you that understand the impact of this work. And I'm especially glad that you get to hear directly from folks on the ground working side by side with me. So thank you, Matt, for having me.
Thank you, Sonja. This is awesome. This assessment or sentiment assessment is when is it due? I mean, we could have put this in our industry newsletter in November. We can put it in the industry newsletter for December if you're still taking
Oh,
uh,
absolutely. So I will be running this survey through February. We will publish the results of this in April. So we have time to get this out to employees. There will be an employer survey coming behind that, but this is really the meat of what we're trying to understand. So feel free to go in, share it, look at it, see the questions that we're asking. That might give you a better idea of what we're looking for too as we work to shift the narrative for everyone.
Yes, I'll study this survey very closely. So again, this is just for employees. There'll be another one for employers. When did you say that would launch?
That'll go out probably the end of January.
Okay.
So we're really trying to get 600 employees to answer this survey for me in hospitality. So restaurants, casinos, hotels,
Yeah.
tourism, like the tourism boards, we're working with those too. Visit Vancouver is part of that. So
Excellent. Okay, excellent, Sonia. Thank you so much. Folks, if you have questions for Sonia, save those to the end, or you can put your question into the chat or kind of DM her directly. Okay, we'll move on to David. David, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
All right, I'm trying to make sure I've minimized my screen and I'm devoted to our section. So, David, tell folks a little bit more about the National Restaurant Association and what you do.
So my role with the National Restaurant Association is to come into an area or a region, kind of stick my nose into people's business, find out what's happening for hospitality workforce development in that area, and then work with teams just like the team that's on the webinar today, who I have worked closely with, to address whatever the issues that they think are most prevalent in their area, whether that's training, whether that's advocacy. Specifically, my role generally centers around training. And the Washington Hospitality Association has placed a deep focus, along with the Workforce Development Board in the area, with lifting the tide of hospitality workers and employers in the area. So that's when I become a potent partner.
Excellent. So let's talk about you're at the national level. Let's talk about national trends or industry needs that you see at your level. Soft skills, are those in demand?
Yeah, the soft skills are definitely in demand, but I want everybody who's on this webinar who's been in hospitality and trained people in hospitality, trained people in these soft skills. I'd like you to change your terminology to power skills, because all of us in the industry know, right, that these are highly transferable skills. We are the training ground of America across the country. We had some little blips in our power skills acumen. One happened with the pandemic, right? And the pandemic had some associated concerns. So a lot of our entry level people who are coming into the industry right now had to suffer the pandemic, right? Had to become educated. Generally, this age was in their high school years. And so they became educated through screens. And so there are a number of different things that add up to that algorithm of social media. I'm at the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals Conference here in New Orleans right now. This was a large topic of discussion. And social media also plays a role. I think the most important thing to understand right now is that there is a calculable and identifiable atrophy in customer service skills across the country. And so the National Restaurant Association is deeply involved in changing that direction.
Excellent. Yeah, you mentioned the customer service skills might seem lacking with Gen Z. I think social media is definitely a part of that. You talked about how these are valuable skills and very much transferable. I started in hospitality, and the skills that I use to kind of de-escalate or to kind of customer service work with a customer, now I use to kind of de-escalate with other stakeholders or even staff, if that comes about. Okay, excellent. So let's talk about industry goals, resources, and collaboration. You kind of mentioned what you do at a national level, and even here in Washington at a regional level, you strengthen partnerships with working boards, workforce boards, industry associations. You design and implement these great workforce development models, and you're in charge of or you help push, promote service success or serve success, guest service gold, hospitality sector, uh, registered apprenticeships. So do you want to talk a little bit more about any of those or kind of what works best when and how before I ask my next question?
Well, I can just answer that question. That's always a bespoke question, right? And so, as I said in the beginning, really my role with the National Association is to come into an area, find out what the issues are, and then I have a large menu of resources, whether it's through Department of Labor grants, whether it's through the National Restaurant Association, whether it's through the American Hotel and Lodging Association. Why I'm a useful person to have on your team screen when we're talking about solutions is I have access to a lot of solutions and also access. I tell people all the time, if you've been in one region of the United States, you've been in one. If you've worked with one workforce development council, you've worked with one. If you work with one tourism board, you've worked with one. You get what I'm saying? So it tends to be not always immediately replicable, right? But we can come together, lay our capacity cards down, see where there are weaknesses, right? Where we maybe have some resources that we need. And then my job is to help fill in those resources, whether that's Serve Success, right? Which is a terrific training program offered by the Washington Hospitality Association, whether that's Guest Service Gold. A number of the people on this webinar are certified to be trainers in Guest Service Gold. So again, it's what's the issue? Do I have any resources to help ameliorate that issue? And then working to implement that with a group of people like who are on this webinar right now. Did that
Excellent.
answer your question?
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of programs. It's just a matter of kind of bringing those together and kind of implementing them in a region. They're all different, right? You said that earlier, and I get that. I get that around Washington State. I mean, the state is very diverse. But we've talked about workforce development. I'm going to go slightly off on a different path because I think you're the person to bring this issue up with, and we have some time. And we've talked about workforce development, but my question is, when does workforce development factor into workforce retention and recruitment? We, State of Washington Tourism, a few years back, actually did a webinar on workforce retention and recruitment. Phil Bruno, who's an attendee on this webinar today, was actually a guest speaker. And we were trying to talk about incentives. That I think that was, gosh, that was maybe in 2021, right when we were kind of coming back from the pandemic, and there was a worker shortage in hospitality, and we're just trying to figure out why and how to bring these workers back into the workforce. So, when should workforce development factor into workforce retention and recruitment?
I think that Jeff will be able to answer that question in more detail, but my answer would be always, right? So I've managed restaurants around the world, including hotels. As soon as I started to integrate with workforce development programs, all of my metrics started to look better, whether that was retention, right? Whether that was recruitment, whether that was training, because of the resources that the public workforce development system brings. And I think a lot of restaurants and hotels are not aware of the resources that organizations like Pac Mountain and other workforce development councils. So when's the time? Right now. And what my suggestion would be is find out who your workforce development council is in your area and cold call them and say, hi, I'm a hotel operator, I'm a restaurant operator, I'm a tourism operator. Let's start a dialogue about what resources you have that you could assist me, right? Apprenticeships, I'll just give one example. Apprenticeships are a fantastic way. When I was running my restaurant and we had apprentices, right, it was a great way to recruit people. And I would add it's a great way to recruit people because another way to aid in retention is by being invested in the professional development of your employees.
Exactly.
Right. For me personally, anytime any organization that I worked for said, hey, David, would you like to become a certified lifeboat captain or a septic tank instructor or all real stories, right? My answer was always yes. And data tells us that employees stay with organizations that are invested in their professional development. And that can be certification, that can be anything really, but just saying, hey, we're invested in you and we want you to do better. Apprenticeship is a great way to do that in your house. And I'd be willing to speak at another time. We could do a whole webinar on apprenticeship. But what I would suggest is, if you are really concerned about recruitment and retention in your hospitality operation, you should give me or Sonja a call right away. We'll connect you with some of the resources that Jeff has available. And if you're in Ocean Shores, we'll connect you with Loren.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and I think with apprenticeships and internships too, it's always good to remind folks that I work with around the state. We always kind of hear folks from, I work with a lot of rural destinations. small offices, usually understaffed, underfunded, and they're always looking for extra resources, or free labor, or not. I shouldn't say free, but help with the work. And interns are a way to do that. And I have to remind these folks that interns, that it also includes some time and resource dedicated to just mentorship. I mean, it's not just a young person or a new person to come in and pick up the slack. These folks need to you have to devote time and energy to our actual mentorship, or in their internship or apprenticeship too. So I think people forget about that. It's one thing to be a good boss, but then it's another thing to be a good mentor for these
Mm,
folks. Well, and you really have to kind of factor that in before you even decide to actually take up an official or proper internship or apprenticeship program. Do you agree?
absolutely. And it changes the face of your house, right? The first time someone said to their parents, I'd like you to meet David Faro, my mentor, I was like, who are they talking about, right? But once you take that to heart, and right, the hospitality industry we're probably one of the oldest industries that's been involved in apprenticeship, right? And so it means that you get to bring a person into your house. I'll add here that if you're doing one of the 9 National Restaurant Association Educational Foundation apprenticeship tracks, that all of the costs are covered through Department of Labor grants. So it's no cost to employers, no cost to employees. Again, I'd love to talk to people about it, but it really provides you for a framework. When I got the framework for my first apprentices, I was all, oh yeah, I should be, and so it gives you as an employer a framework for a robust training program. But at the same time, you can use it to recruit. Hey, we have 2 apprenticeships available at Restaurant X, right? Whenever I did that, my applications went up by 3x for that week or for that period, right? But the other thing is when I had apprentices who were working with me, retention really became a thing that they were concerned about. They wanted to stay. They wanted to keep taking advantage of mentorship. They wanted to take advantage of professional development. And to an apprentice, right? In my experience, I've had a different experience with that employee than I have with just employees who have been there. So I would highly, highly encourage people to explore apprenticeship, find out if it's the right thing for them. And this includes mom and pops. It includes corporate. It includes bowling alleys. So it's an option that's supported and available to any tourism organization in Washington State.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, thanks, David. We'll move on to Jeff. Mr. Bowe. Okay, Jeff. So David just told us a little bit more about the Restaurant Association. I'm learning more about Pack Mountain, or more specifically, Pack Mountain Workforce Development Council. Why don't you share a little bit more about that organization and what you do?
Yeah, happy to do it. And again, thanks for having me with this very impressive group of panelists. And David had mentioned earlier, so what he does is, he kind of goes into regions and he pokes around and kind of finds out what's going on in the hospitality industry. Um, what a workforce development board does, or a workforce development council, very simple terms, we're sort of the oversight group for the region's work source centers. And so Pack Mountain covers just a piece of Washington State. Really, it's just the Olympia region and then out to the coast, Grays Harbor, Pacific County. But we're the oversight group for those workforce centers, the physical locations. And so what we get through that is people who are coming in looking for work. And those people are coming from many different places. Some of them have been recently laid off. Some of them have been out of work for a while, and maybe they have skills that are not really marketable in the current business climate. And so we take a look at that for them and determine, through essentially career counseling, what sort of skills they might need to be reemployed. We also work with different populations. We work with justice impacted populations. We work with individuals who maybe are experiencing poverty and who don't have access to resources that help them gain employment. So it's a pretty robust service. But I think David's words were good in terms of just really poking around and finding out what the climate is for a workforce in a specific region. Our region is a little bit different. My role specifically is sector strategies. And so what that means is, from a work source perspective, sort of the old school model is you walk into work source and you meet a case manager and they say, hey, what do you want to do with your life? Right. And then they'll say, well, I'd really like to be a archaeologist. And so the old school model is great. Well, let's get you some credentials and get you trained to do that work. But the problem with that is that if you're in a region where they're not hiring archaeologists, you're sort of still sitting at home, and you're not a contributing member of society, shall we say. So what we do in Pack Mountain is we've done a lot of labor market research where we rely heavily on data to determine which industry sectors are what we call in demand. And what that means is over a period of time, the numbers show that this industry is going to be hiring people. And so a part of that is determining what skills workers need to get into that industry. And so it's very good news to the people on this call that one of our in-demand sectors is hospitality. And hospitality happens to be one of my passions. I know many people on this call, and I miss all of you, by the way. But workforce is equally as fun, and it's sort of a dotted line to hospitality because I still get to work with that community, all of the hotels, restaurants, attractions, everything that makes up that community. And so really going in and working with those individuals and honestly working with all the people on this call in different ways. Sonja showed her industry, which is a wonderful graphic that sort of shows career pathways. So she had talked about, how do we get people interested in hospitality in the first place, right? And that has to happen at a young age. And how do we get people reskilled to go into hospitality? That can happen at a little bit older age, but there's still an education process there. And then David talked about his various programs, the guest service gold training, the apprenticeships. All of those are useful tools, and they're tools that we can use to train individuals right away. We also work very closely with all of the colleges, particularly community colleges. But that is sort of like turning the Titanic. It's hard to go into a community college and say, hey, we need a hospitality program. Now, having said that, there's a few that do it very well. Grays Harbor College has a culinary program. So does South Puget Sound Community College, in addition to many others throughout our state. But those programs, they can take some time to get through. So sometimes what we need to do is give people a little push with some credentials that they could obtain very quickly, and then we introduce them to employers. And that's primarily what my role is to take people who are trained and get them connected with those employers. We have a team of sector leads that engage employers in our hospitality community to make sure that we give them employees that are ready to work.
Yes, excellent. So you answered a lot of my questions.
Okay.
And I think we need to back up a little bit. I think we should specify where exactly the 5 counties that Pack Mountain represents, right? And then can you also give a little bit more context? So if you're representing 5 counties, is that the same? Is that kind of a similar model elsewhere across the state with these workforce boards? Is it also like a cluster of counties in spread all over the state?
Yeah, that's a great question. I probably should have led with that. So Pack Mountain, first of all, there's 12 workforce development boards or councils throughout the state. So we're just one of those 12. And our region specifically is Thurston County, which is the Olympia region, and then Lewis County south of us, and then Mason County, and then going all the way to the coast. So Grays Harbor County and then Pacific County, which has a very robust tourism community. And so I'm very excited to work with Loren and others in those communities. But that's what our region, that's how it's laid out. And we're actually one of the largest in the state, which is both good and bad. It's good because it allows us to it qualifies us for more funding that we can distribute throughout the region, but also it's a larger region. So it can be a good and bad scenario. But Seattle, King County has its own workforce development board, which it really needs because it's a more metropolitan district. But then as we get to the east side of the state, those councils become a little bit larger as well, but a little bit less populated.
Okay, well, I have 2 questions for you, Jeff. So you mentioned, the community college programs. You mentioned connecting employees with employers, and so it sounds like you're a systems partner. You're a connector in this web of workforce development. So what resources exist with your organization? I remember you actually said there's grant funding. You can help people with transportation costs. You can help people with attire. There's, and then there's the other kind of resume building and interview prep at the workforce centers. So what else can people kind of go to you for?
Yes, thanks for that. So, to provide a little bit more depth into what we do, our funding comes from both state and federal sources. And what we do is the most effective way to use that money is to sort of braid it together, and then we'll take in participants. We call them participants, uh, people who have gone through the work source system, and essentially we've determined that they need additional training or upskilling in order to get into the current workforce in our region. And so once we've determined that, we identify any barriers they may have. It could include transportation. The funding that we have, there's some caveats. So it has to be sort of the last resort. So if there's other funding available, for example, we don't pay for college tuition because there's Pell Grants and there's other funding available for that. But if there's other barriers that prohibit them from getting those types of grants or prohibit them from going to school, we'll take a look at those barriers and try to make sure that we're able to mitigate those so that those participants are able to go to school or get the training they need to get the job they need. Most of our funding actually goes to support employers. And so we are promoting career pathways for hospitality and actually 5 other sectors. And we'll go to employers and we'll actually partner with employers directly. And similar to David's apprenticeship program, we'll do on-the-job training programs where we might pay some of the wages for that individual to receive training on the job. So
Wow.
it's work-based learning.
Yeah.
And again, it's another way for individuals to be upskilled and credentialed, or even just to gain skills. To as opposed to going to college, we might be able to just put them into employment directly with an employer, and we'll help pay for some of those wages as that individual is being skilled on the job and reskilled, upskilled, whatever the case may be. We also provide work experience funding for work experiences, which is essentially just a paid internship. And so we're
Wow.
always looking for employers that are willing to partner with us and be a part of the training solution. And
Oh,
that's the big key for us. And that's what most of our funding goes for. We do have other funding set aside for very specific grants. For example, we have a grant right now that allows us to be able to go into some of the jails and work with impacted individuals and to try to get them the skills they need for reentry. And
wow.
And that's a big job because there's a lot of subconscious bias there.
Yeah, so
When
that's a good.
yeah, I'll say when you talk to some of these people, you realize that most of them made mistakes when they were very young, and they're ready to go back to work and they're anxious to prove themselves. And fortunately, hospitality is one of those industries that has a low barrier to entry. And so I think it's important for the employers on this call to understand that if you're not looking in that direction, it might be a place that you take a look, because these individuals are excited to work, and there's some really smart people and creative people in that population. But that's just an example of some of the ways we use specific grants.
Well, excellent. I mean, you kind of you kind of got to my next question. I want to wrap this up with you, Jeff, and turn it over to Loren. We still have our other questions or group discussion and questions from the audience. But if you can talk about collaborating with regional partners, kind of going into or working with folks that were formerly incarcerated, or with local prisons, or more specifically, the work that you're doing in Grays Harbors County. So if you can share just an example or two collaborating with regional partners to address workforce needs, what would those be, and what kind of could those be examples for other parts of the state to kind of champion?
Well, I mean, Loren is going to talk a lot about some of the specific things she's doing in Grays Harbor. And she and I had just talked yesterday, in fact, with regards to an initiative that she's working on. But with regards to hospitality, again, I would say the key is working with employers and really determining what it is that the employers want us to do. Like I said, the old school model is sort of like we would train people, but maybe not for industries that we're currently hiring. And so if we're talking to employers and they're telling us, hey, we want people to have this guest service gold training, we think it's really cool. Well, we're going to we're going to direct funding towards that and make sure that we get people, first of all, educated in hospitality as to what that means. What is the career pathway? As Sonja mentioned earlier, there's a lot of misconceptions about low pay and working on weekends, and some of that may be true, but if you're looking at a true career pathway, that doesn't have to be the end. That's just the beginning. And so that's a huge piece of what we do. And then finding the right employers to give those individuals the experience they need to continue on in the industry. So those are some examples of the ways that we work with community partners and other system partners, and specifically the people on this call, quite frankly.
Excellent. Okay, perfect, Jeff. Well, that tees us up for Loren and a good segue. All right, Loren, thanks, Jeff. So, Loren, why don't you tell us more about the work that you're doing in Ocean Shores? Is that right, Grays Harbor?
Yes. Well, about a year ago, while we were transitioning from governors, I took a position with a friend of mine at her hotel, and I realized that one of the big struggles that we have in hotel industry is finding people to actually come and work. And it's a very irregular employment. So, one day you might need 50 people, the next day you might need 20. And we were looking at how do we enhance the ability of the hospitality industry to find employees. And I went back to my passion of working with people in prison to create pathways and career goals and give them a life of success. And hospitality just seemed to be the place where they fit in so well. What happens in prisons is where you do laundry, you do housekeeping, you do maintenance, and you do cooking. And so I reached out to the Department of Corrections and asked if there would be a way that instead of just releasing people with none of these skills and none of this education, we could go inside and work with them there and do the guest service gold and any other trainings that would be possible while they were incarcerated. And then to be able to take that and connect them to employers or locations that would need their education and service.
Excellent. And so that was in collaboration with Pac Mountain and Washington Hospitality Association?
It started just with me and the employers in Grays Harbor or in Ocean Shores. And then through the Hospitality Association, I was connected with Sonja, which connected me to Jeff and then to David. And so we've created this little group of how do we take 4,000 people who release every month and find a segment of them that would be interested in working in hospital. Not 4,000 every month, 4,000 every year. And how do we put them into a career pathway in hospitality?
Excellent. No, great work. I think that answers my next question is why is it important to meet hospitality workers where they are in terms of career and life experience? I mean, it sounds like, and I say this all the time to folks, we're kind of in the hospitality business. We're supposed to be hospitable. We're supposed to be welcoming, and we're supposed to include people, make people feel welcomed and included. And so, the work not only with folks that are formerly incarcerated, but folks that are maybe just kind of semi-retired, or maybe folks that struggle with a disability. I mean, there's an opportunity for everyone in these industries, correct?
Definitely. And you see it when you go into different establishments. And life experience really helps when you're interacting with people. It makes the experience more personal. I know for me personally, working behind the desk, when I see where somebody's from, and I will look and go, "Oh, you're from, this part of the world. What brings you here?" And it starts a conversation, and that personalizes the service.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
everybody appreciates customer service that is on that level that identifies them not just as a customer, but as a person.
Excellent. Yes. So it sounds like you know customer service well, Loren. And so my question for you is, and this is a great conversation piece, and maybe even for folks on the webinar too, feel free to chime in into the chat. How do you define excellence in customer service?
Excellence in customer service to me is when the guest smiles and says, "Thank you, I will be back." Or, oh, I sent you some reviews that
Yes,
I
I'll pull
got
those up.
from two guests, and it becomes so comfortable when you can just say, the one review, she called on Labor Day weekend and said, "I'm on my way up there. I've never been there. I don't know what to do." And so I said, "Just show up and I'll take care of you." And I was able to put her into a room that was comfortable and very girly, because at the Canterbury Inn, all of our rooms are individually designed. And then it was Labor Day, so I called the restaurant that she wanted to go to make sure they were open, and told the person on the phone that she would be there. And so they provided excellent customer service. And when I saw the review, it was like, wow, that was fun for me to do, but it impacted her and she will be back. And I think that's a big part of what customer service is about, is making sure that the individual wants to come back.
Wants to come back.
I see Phil says by exceeding expectations.
There you go.
Always. And it's a fun, and it becomes enjoyable when you can do that. Just providing a box of hot chocolate because the vending machine didn't want one or
Simple
didn't have
things.
one.
Little things.
Just little things that you go out of your way to do.
Okay, excellent. So this is because I want to drill down. We have a few minutes left. I want to make sure we cover guest service gold, but I also want to kind of make sure that people understand. I think there's some overlap. I mean, excellent customer service, and when we always kind of think about the customer first, keeping that the customer centric. What about the employee? Is there an overlap between positive energy or customer satisfaction with employee satisfaction? How does that all kind of relate to one another?
Well, I think that a business owner or a manager who has excellent customer service skills will automatically do that with their employers as well, um, with their employees as well. It's one of those things where when you have happy employees, you will have happy guests.
That's
And
well
as
said.
a manager, that's something that you always want to ensure. And when you really look at it, when you know your employees are happy, you are happy. When your employees are happy, you know your guests will be happy. And so it kind of works that way in any industry. But and that's why the guest service gold is not only, it may be geared towards hospitality, but once you get it and once you know how to do good customer service, you can do it anywhere.
Yeah, well said. Well, and I think, I mean, happy, you said I think that's right. I think folks that are happy to come to work and happy to help others, but also kind of take pride in their work, or kind of David mentioned it earlier too, like with an apprentice program, are mentored and are empowered and are knowledgeable to kind of share about the facilities or about a destination. Um, and so I think it just kind of it snowballs, and it's just kind of this feel good energy when I'm happy, when I'm knowledgeable, when I'm supported, when I'm empowered, and when I have an employer that believes in me and helps with these training programs like Guest Service Gold. So we're right on time. We have 10 minutes left. I want to make sure people understand what Guest Service Gold is, and that you took the class as an attendee, really as a student,
Right.
and now you're also a trainer. So if you can give us more information about Guest Service Gold, that would be great. And then we can kind of do a group chat, and then we can open questions up to the audience.
Well, Guest Service Gold focuses on the 7 principles, which are recovery, personalization, knowledge, passion, commitment, inclusion, and initiative.
Excellent.
And I think once you give those to your employees and, allowing them to make decisions, allowing them to maybe in hospitality, upgrade a room. One of the reviews I sent was I had some guests from Germany who just were in a room with no view. I switched them over to a room with a view. You're not going to take someone from, the $65 room and put them in the presidential suite, but allowing your employer or employee to make those decisions, it makes them feel good. It makes them feel like they're valuable. And that just keeps the fire going. And that's what you want. You want employees with passion who want to learn about what is there, what can I do? They can answer the questions. And Guest Service Gold brings all of those points to them.
Okay, so then really quickly, how long does it take? Just a few hours, correct?
Yes.
Just
You
a
can
few
do it
hours.
online, you can do it over time, but it is far more enjoyable and far more valuable to be able to do it in a group setting.
Why
I
is that?
did both because then you get to tell the stories and you get to have the interaction and you get to develop relationships with the people that you have done the class with, and
Excellent.
that will continue throughout your hospitality career.
Okay. And how much does it cost? Do I need to be a member of the Washington Hospitality Association to take this course?
There's funding available for them. I know that David and Sonja have different avenues. If you had to just go online, sign up for it on your own and do it that way, I think it was $60, but there's definitely funding avenues that can be done.
Okay. And then lastly, how long does this certification last? Do I have to recertify every year, every 2, 3 years?
Nope, it's forever. And what the cool thing is that you get to put the CGSP initials next to your name so that you can go into a job and say, I am a certified guest service professional.
Excellent. All right. There you go, folks. Well, I mean, it sounds like I can do this, right, Sonja? It sounds like a lot of people can do this, and once they have it, they have it for the rest of their careers. I hope they do kind of like touch up on some of these. What did you say? 7 qualities over time. I'm sure there's plenty of time and opportunity to do that later in the career as well, or with Washington Hospitality Association, or at a state tourism conference like State of Washington Tourism. So, hope to kind of partner with you on kind of refreshing these skills or kind of bringing these to the forefront of people's careers. Do you have something else to say, Loren?
One of the things that I wanted to also is when it comes down to hiring justice involved people, there is a lot of benefits to it when it comes down to bonding and tax incentives and support from the state for doing that. We are also working with the Department of Corrections to help educate employers on what it would take and what to understand about people who have been formerly incarcerated. So those will be services that will be available to employers as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Loren. Okay, folks. Jeff, David, let's bring you on back. Marissa, we have a few minutes left. I want to kind of check in with you, Marissa, and if there's any questions in the Q&A.
I don't see any questions in the Q&A and not a ton in the chat, but I do have one that was actually from Phil to David, and it just came to host and panelists, so not everyone can see it, but I think it's an interesting one. I'll read it here. So I saw in the U.S. jobs report released yesterday that there were 150,000 jobs created last month. Of that, 49,000 were in hospitality, and the question is to David, are there particular regions that are growing over others?
Oh, good question, Phil.
I wish I could answer that question for you. I saw that jobs report, was super excited about it. I haven't drilled down on the data yet to really locate regions. So for the point of this conversation, I'll say the Pac Mountain region of Washington State is growing in hospitality and is focused on it and is a great place. And I'm not saying this facetiously. When you have the State Restaurant Association, when you have an employer like Loren, and when you have the Workforce Development Council on board like Jeff, and you have the National Restaurant Association as part of that group, Phil, I would really tell you that Washington State, and I've felt this way for a long time, is a great state to be a hospitality professional in because of this kind of multi-sector focus that we have on the industry. I don't know if that answered your question, Phil, but if you reach out to me later on, I can really drill down on that data for you and give you some more data. But I don't have that off the top of my head right now, but that would be my answer.
Thanks, David.
Awesome.
Okay, folks, we have a few minutes left. Here's your chance to ask your question with this great panel of guest speakers. In the meantime, I'll just pose this question to folks. We've talked about the all these workforce development tools for employees. I think there's a lot of resources out there for them. And so I guess panelists, you can pick and choose how you want to answer this, but what advice would you give to employees to kind of sift through all of this information and resources? Or what advice would you give to employers to make sure that they know about this and they bring it to the attention of their employees?
I think I can answer the employer part. It's kind of a big deal to me when we're growing employees and we're giving the opportunities to get all these trainings and credentials and be this phenomenal employee, and we hand them off to an employer. How does that employer handle such a great employee? And I would say, just to talk to an employer, just make sure that they have a clear pathway internally. Make sure that you are bringing them along for the ride. And make sure that they feel that they're needed and wanted in that industry. Find those trainings. When we look at what an employer believes is a training to what an employee believes is a training is completely different. So talk to your employees, find mentors for them and bring them along for the ride, and you'll hold on to employees when they feel that they're valued and they're needed.
Sonja?
I will say one of the things that I'm doing in Ocean Shores is working with each of the hotel owners and actually going into the hotels when they're doing their busy days and observing and supporting and sharing, pieces of information that will help them and asking the biggest question of what do you need to be successful?
Nice. Yeah, well said. Good point, Loren.
Matt, we did have a question come in if you want me to read that one off.
Yeah, go ahead, Marissa.
Awesome. Come from Chantel, and it says this might be a larger conversation, but a lot of workers in tech and or other industries are being laid off. What are we as an industry in Washington and or nationwide doing to target high skill employees and training them to be a part of our hospitality workforce at multiple levels?
Good question. Jeff?
That's a great question.
You saw me smile at that one. Yeah, no, this is something that we deal with every day, and it is a little scary to watch. We get notices from the government. They're called WARN notices, but basically they're it's a letter that states that there's a specific employer laying off 50 or more people. And we've gotten more of those in the last quarter than we've gotten all of last year. So big businesses are laying people off in large numbers, and a lot of those are manufacturing businesses. It seems like mostly due to just downsizing and whatnot. But I think the bigger question is what are we doing nationwide? I can't necessarily speak to that, but I do know that at least in our region, hospitality, we've determined that is an in-demand sector, and so we put a lot of dollars towards the education piece and just making sure that when someone is laid off, and when we get one of these notices, one of these WARN notices, we actually go out to an employer and we'll do a full presentation about all of the labor market data, and we'll present, at least in our region, the 6 in-demand sectors, hospitality being one of them, and help people understand the career pathway so that they understand what skills they need. And as I said before, it's actually a pretty low barrier to entry, but what skills they might need, which employers are hiring, and then the career pathway, how long might it take them to get to the wage that they're looking for. So that's a big part of the discussion. And sometimes we try to get them into other sectors. Wood and forest products is another one of our in-demand sectors, and so many of those skills are transferable. So it really becomes an individual discussion at that point.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, folks, we are just over the hour, but we started a little late, so I'll stay on a little late if our attendees can and if our guest speakers can. I see 3 great questions in Q&A, so we'll just kind of wrap this up really quickly. Shelby, and this is for maybe Sonja or everyone, what languages is Guest Service Gold available in? Is it Spanish, French, or just English?
English and Spanish.
English and Spanish, okay. And then what are the top three? The top three AHLEI certifications that you're seeing folks interested in outside of Guest Service Gold. So top three outside of Guest Service Gold.
For hotels specifically or for hospitality? Because right now I would say
In
that
general.
there's heavy demand for Guest Service Gold across the country. There's a significant interest in the Serve Success program because of the stackable credentials. And also Serve Success is part of the related training and instruction for the apprenticeships. So anybody who's online right now from a hospitality organization, I would suggest looking up Serve Success. And then our certified hospitality manager from AHLEI is part of academic curriculums and workforce development curriculums across the country.
Excellent. Thanks, David. And lastly, from Lisa Cruz, our colleague here at State of Washington Tourism, does the training include a cultural awareness segment for welcoming international visitors? This is really timely. With FIFA coming in 2026, when we see visitors all over the world, is your business ready? So Sonja, or David, do you have any insight on that? If cultural awareness or cultural sensitivity?
Sonja, I'll take that one if that's okay with you.
That's
I think Loren mentioned earlier the value of a cohort taking the class. Guest Service Gold is being used across the country. Kansas City, as an example, some other places are thinking about it as well, because there are going to be large international crowds coming. So do we have one of the 7 attributes that Loren was talking about? Is one of them how to deal with international guests? No. But I think Loren could testify to the fact that if you understand inside of a cohort, right, the 7 attributes of good customer service, of great customer service, of gold star customer service, right? Inside of that, you would definitely understand some really useful methodologies for giving great customer service to anyone, whether they're from in the country or out of the country. Recognizing what their needs are is a big part of it. And then we know our international customers are going to have a different set of needs probably than our domestic customers. Guest Service Gold helps people recognize what those needs are and also how to provide the service required to make those people leave and tell a great story about your operation. And that's what I would say is the focal point of Guest Service Gold, is that it enables you and your employees with a framework so that when I leave your operation, I'm telling great stories about Matthew's House of Pancakes or whatever it may be.
And let me add on to that too. One of the things is that when you use the training, it's not just about telling or doing, it's about asking questions and asking a guest, well, in Germany, how do you do this? Or where you come from, how does that work? And then being able to adapt to say, this is their expectation.
Well said. Sonja, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I was going to say that the one thing I love about the Guest Service Gold training is whoever is teaching it is going to bring a whole different experience to the class than what like David would bring to what I would bring based on our past experiences. So I think that this is a great platform that we can tailor it to like David said, to who we're teaching it to. FIFA coming in is going to be huge. And so I think that there's a lot of great opportunity for whoever is teaching that class at that time to build that into the training program and make it their own.
Yeah.
And I would add to that, Matt, just as an example, we just in Eastern Oregon, so in a rural area of Oregon, if there are any rural workforce development or hospitality organizations watching right now, we just certified over 150 people in the Port of Morrow and Eastern Oregon along I-84. Not one of them was from a hospitality operation, but yet all of them found deep value in this certification because we all serve customers, right? And so at the same time that this is a hospitality program, it's more an invitation to look at customer service through a hospitality lens. And we find that supervisors of warehouses, that truck drivers, that the front office staff of a hospital, front office staff of Head Start, one, they like to look at what they do through a different lens. Right. And two, we are the industry that has taught customer service to America since before you and I were born, that's for sure. So we're experts in this, right? So just again, right, this learning doesn't just apply to hospitality, it applies to anybody who integrates with another person in the course of their work.
Perfect. I love it, David. Sounds like you can be a professor in this someday. Okay, one last thanks, folks. I know we're over time. We'll get everyone going, but I want to sneak in Shelby's quick question. Last question. Are there any prerequisites for these certifications? Like the
Good
amount of work
question.
hours, age, high school education? None at all. All right. We're welcoming to everyone. Okay, great, folks. Well, thank you for joining us on this skill shop in November. We will take December off and we'll see you in January.